Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, and once again, I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES for short, or in Japan for the Famicom Disk System, which same applies to Metroid, Kid Icarus, and Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and so much more. So anyways, last time we somehow managed able to explore quite a lot of areas for the likes of Hyrule, but not only just to able to discover certain secrets, but also we somehow managed able to actually access to even more heart containers that we've actually gotten through, and on top of that, we somehow managed to get ourselves one of our sword upgrades, which appears to be the white sword apparently. So as a result though, we no longer have ourselves the wooden sword, so this means about the fact that we can pretty much get ourselves a bit more comfortable at this rate. Especially noticeable that we still need able to find some more heart containers, especially noticeable that we do need to get some more until we get ourselves our final sword upgrades, which that wasn't until whatever we get to later on the other hand, because, well, we still need able to actually just to find some more. I think, relatively speaking though actually, is the fact that for what I can gather, that I think we've only just got about 7 dungeons left, and on top of all that stuff though is the fact that I'm pretty sure we got about, I would say 2 overworld heart containers left. Although, before we get into more details onto this little topic on the other hand though, speaking of dungeons though, is the fact that yesterday we have tackled through 2 dungeons as well, both of which are being the forms of the eagle and the moon, because of the forms of the shape resemblance, and on top of that, we did somehow manage to beat 2 bosses throughout the majority of those 2 dungeons respectively, which we have Aquamento and also Dodongo, which Dodongo's weakness is obviously explosion for its bombs and stuff like that, which, yeah, that pretty much summarizes such. And overall, we did the actual things itself a little bit more comfortable so far, despite I stumbled across 2 deaths so far, most notably with the forms of enemy encounters and Link's overall control, but honestly, that it might not bother me too much though, because, well, nothing in this run can be perfect though, because there are a few times though that I somehow got screwed over by the forms of certain control problem, but either way though, it knows what it is I guess, when it comes to old school games these days. So, anyways, there's another secret right there, is you have to use the bomb to able to explode onto this particular point right there as I just did earlier, and that way you can get yourselves 30 more rubies, so nicely done for the most part, especially because, again, we still need able to grind for, you know, a heck of a lot of more of those rubies as far as I'm aware, because obviously we need to buy certain items until for later. And also worth noting for is the fact that, as you probably already noticed, the bow and arrows will also count as ruby grind or ruby currency if you're able to use the bow and arrows to begin with, so yeah, keep that in mind. So anyway, so speaking of which though, is the fact that today for this video is the fact that we're pretty sure that we'll definitely go ahead and just try to able to find some even more secrets, like for example, we able to actually find another one right there, but this time we only got 10 rubies this time on that particular secret cave, as far as we've somehow managed able to entering into, thanks to the forms of that bush that we've actually burned. And on top of that, we can pretty much guarantee we can able to do 2 more dungeons throughout the majority of certain parts of the playthrough. So anyway, so now we've actually get access to another secret shop, but the one I'm going after is the bigger shield, because as soon as you're able to realize that we've now got a much more better defense from here, especially because it makes the game a little bit more comfortable to you, especially noticeable if you're having a hard time with the game so far, then basically I highly recommend you able to go after the bigger shield, because that way it helps you out, especially that it allows you to able to block certain projectiles very easily, especially when you come to a standstill. So yeah, that might be summarized as such. So anyway, so now we've actually got the bigger shield with us, so now let's go ahead and then go to the south, and then also just head straight to the right, so that way we can able to actually go into the next dungeon. So in some cases though, this is where the game starts to get a bit difficult, especially noticeable that we actually stumbled across into ourselves probably is the most annoying enemies in the game, next to the other ones until for later. So for now, here we go on to the third dungeon in the game, in this case in level 3. So in some cases though, we can pretty much guarantee we can able to just, you know, still collect some more keys, defeat certain enemies as usual, and heck, even especially noticeable just trying to able to discover some more rooms, and all that stuff. So as a result, there's not much else I can honestly explain about this for the most part, so... I mean, these little blobs are not that much of a threat though, they're pretty simple to able to actually take them down. But, if we move on to the next room up ahead, this is where we're able to actually start to introduce those little annoying enemies known as these dark nuts. So as a result, in order to able to attack these dark nuts, well, basically though, you have to able to stab them from behind, or in certain occasions you're able to actually stab them from either each side. However though, they block in front of you, so because of this though, you have to know every single strategy when it comes to likely not knowing of how you're able to actually just trying to deal with these guys. But there's also another alternative way you can able to actually take those dark nuts down very easily, but I'll point out whenever we move on to the next room, on to the left, specifically this room right here. And as you can see, I somehow managed able to place one of my bombs right near where the dark nuts was, so as a result, it can technically kill them, so as a result, that'd be a pretty recommendable way for doing that, but I highly recommend you do not waste so many bombs in these specific locations like this, especially because, well, you probably already noticed about the fact that how difficult this game can be sometimes, especially due to this limitations of, you know what I mean, certain stuff throughout. But anyways, let's go to the south here, and oh god, there's a whole bunch of dark nuts, but thankfully you can ignore them and head on straight to this next secret room, which actually features the most important item throughout the game for later progression, and that's what appears to be this little raft. So as a result, we'll point it out until for later. So for now, I think that pretty much takes care of it from here, as far as I'm aware. So, anyway, I think the actual dungeon itself is called, for the sake of the forms of the third dungeon that we're actually entering right now. This dungeon was called Manja. So as a result though, I think that's as far as I can try to explain about this. Oh, and there are some very annoying obstacles, like specifically those little disc skull things, which allows you to able to disable your attacks. Like if you dare touch one, not only do you lose your health, but also you won't be able to actually just attack with your sword until for about 2 seconds or 3 seconds, because I'm pretty sure you'll be paralyzed if you touch them, because otherwise though, you just have to watch out for these things, because unlike, let's just say, A Link to the Past or Link's Awakening, that there's a way you can able to actually get rid of these things by simply utilizing magic powder and stuff, but there's no magic powder in this game sadly, so, but then again though, it's probably because of the limitations of the NES cartridge itself or something, but either way though, it knows what it is I guess, so a few things I want to explain while this is going on. Today's day is of course the 4th of December today, in this case in 2022 today. Oh, and by the way, there's another hint right there. Did you get the sword from the old man on top of the waterfall? Which I certainly have, especially that we already done that since the very first part of this Let's Play, which is pretty cool I must say, because just like the forms of how it does it on Breath of the Wild, you can able to actually do whatever you want to go to, so it doesn't matter which one of those things you are able to prefer your preferences anyway, for which specific parts you want to go into. So as a result though, I do like the idea, especially noticeable about the fact that, well again, that was before when Breath of the Wild might able to actually offer you to do whatever the heck you want to do. Like, for example, do you want to able to tackle through, you know, the actual, the Hyrule Castle without, needing to deal with the forms of the Divine Beasts? Or, in some cases, though, side quests you really want to go for, and, you can do all sorts of things in Breath of the Wild, aside from the forms of that particular, well, DLC stuff, so anyway though, so now we've actually access to the dungeon map, and I think we're actually getting pretty close towards the end of this particular dungeon itself. Although mind you that we have to come across into the forms of whole groups of dark nuts right there, so seriously, whenever I think about it, it kind of reminds me like the forms of one of those portal versions of Dark Knight, when it comes to likely like, I don't know what you would call it. But anyways though, so I think we're almost there, so it's just we need to take care of these more enemies around here. Especially that we don't okay, whatever. Because that's fine, because not only do we get even more rupees, but we got a heart back. So, anyway, so here's the forms of the next boss fight right here, and this what appears to be by the forms of Manhandler. So basically, all you have to do is basically just keep stepping onto it, and that's it really. So, relatively a tricky boss fight, but when you get the hang of it though, it's actually not too bad. So as a result, there we go. Dungeon 3 is completed. Now we're going to move on to the 4th dungeon. But, before I do with all that stuff though, we need to take care of a lot of secrets first. Because just like the forms of how it does it on Metroid, that basically though, I love discovering secrets. Especially that one thing I do appreciate about the forms of not only playing through certain The Legend of Zelda games on my own time, but also the Metroid series as well, that I love managed able to pull off certain, you know, tricks, but also just to, love to discover secrets for, certain items you can obtain, and also just managed able to learn certain, secret techniques you can perform, specifically in Metroid's case, because as a result, that's in Super Metroid, as you probably already know, despite the fact that I still need to be able to learn, the actual wall jump trick, but, I will try to practice that on my own time for a bit, on the Super Nintendo Classic Mini on my own time, so as a result though, I can pretty much classify if I'm able to mentioning about that, so anyways though, so I think we've almost had exactly 100 rupees again. Oh, and by the way, something's worth mentioning I forgot to mention about, that I recently managed able to, you know, done with the forms of, playing through 3 Mario Party games recently for the sake of the forms of this month so far. And the reason being for this is because I'm actually going to be playing through Mario Party games, well, specifically for the countdown to Christmas kind of thing, because I just essentially love doing that, especially noticeable because, well, relatively speaking now, every time when Christmas is almost approaching, I always spending some of my time playing Mario Party games with CPU players, despite the fact that how punishing hard mode can be sometimes for CPU players. But as a result though, specifically that yesterday, when I somehow managed to play Mario Party 3 on my own time, and as a result though, no matter what though, me and Wario are almost really close for the sake of the forms of trying to be on the lead. And no matter what though, that Wario just somehow managed able to guard not only, by the way, there's another heart container right there, but we do need to save that for later, so don't worry, we will be back for that, because we do need that specific item in order to able to make our way from here, so because for now, let's just go ahead and just, you see that little boardwalk thingy right there? Well, if you approach onto that, that is when you immediately activate the actual raft. So as a result, yeah, that basically summarizes of how the raft item works. So there we go, there's another heart container, and I think we've pretty much almost done with the heart containers collecting. So mind you, it doesn't seem quite a lot heart containers to obtain in this game, because I'm pretty sure it only contains like I think there was like 16 heart containers in total. So as a result, you start the game off as in 3 heart containers, as you know, but then I think there's only a grand total of like 13 of those heart containers to find. So again, that was before when A Link to the Past able to actually introduce into ourselves the pieces of hearts. So as a result though, you know, with like collecting 4 pieces, and then if you get 4 pieces in total, then basically though you get yourselves another heart container. However though, unlike in Twilight Princess, you need to obtain 5 pieces of the actual piece of hearts for able to actually just get yourselves a heart container, as far as I do somehow manage to found out. So, pretty insane I must say. So, but anyway, so yeah, when I played Mario Party 3 from my own time yesterday, playing Chilly Waters because of Christmas themed board, and as a result though, that somehow Wario got very lucky with not only that he somehow managed able to got himself, well, as far as I do somehow realize that I set the game on 50 turns, in this case full play, because I love playing good old classic Mario parties. Well, apart from one exception though, which appears to be Mario Party Advance because it's a single player focus, and also the game become incredibly boring though after a while in Mario Party Advance, so thus there's no multiplayer and there's no other party boards, assuming if you're able to actually just to like, well, I'm not exactly sure for saying this because, well, I just have no words. But I digress. So, yeah, and by the way, that's the way you can able to go to the 4th dungeon, just right up there. So if we hit on here, and that is when you move on to the next dungeon. So, yeah, nothing long or confusing to get there, so let's just go ahead and get started. And I think this dungeon was called the Snake, because as far as I'm aware, you'll find out until whenever we're able to come across into our dungeon map, so... But I digress. So yeah, because of this though, in the beginning portion whenever I play Mario Party 3 on my own time, that I've managed to come across into a rare item called the Wacky Watch, which if you do use it, then it'll instantly go into the last 5 turns after the turn has been finished. So as a result, assuming if we pretty much done, which I somehow accidentally managed to obtain that rare item to begin with, on the likes of the beginning portion of the game, when it gets to the point, when I was on turn 50, in this case the last turn, somehow, well, before that actually, Waluigi just somehow managed able to obtain the plunger chest, which allows him to able to steal anyone else's items, and somehow he chooses me because I somehow obtained the Wacky Watch, and he stole my Wacky Watch. And because of this though, he did somehow save that until the last turn, because my god, we've gone for the longest game so far when it comes to the Mario Party Marathon, when it comes to Christmas countdown of my life. And because of that though, he used the Wacky Watch on the final turn for turn 50, and then it somehow goes into like a 55 turn game, which is ridiculous if you ask me. God, I couldn't imagine if you managed able to get like 2 of those things for Wacky Watches, it can take far too long. Especially with all that, you know, many board events, especially noticeable with the insane amount of action times you have to deal with. And on top of that, so many item mini games you have to sift through. And on top of that, so many battle games that I somehow got screwed over for the likes of those 2 luck-based mini games, which there are Stacked Deck, alongside with the forms of Merry-Go Chomp, because god, those mini games sucks. But anyways though, but that's just me. And on top of that, whenever when Wario did somehow manage to able to claim himself the Lucky Charm item, which allows you to force to pick one of those players, will be forced to play the Game Guy minigame. But then, after about a couple of turns later, when Wario just somehow used it by himself, after all that he almost guaranteed to caught up with the forms of so many coins, but then he somehow succeed twice within the actual Magic Boxes Game Guy minigame. And because of that, well, he somehow managed to get, I would say 96 coins that he bet on, but then he did somehow succeed twice, so that brings him to ×4, and no matter what though, he got himself the Coin Star for the Coin Star record. And on top of that, after when this is done, he got himself a hidden block contains a star, and no matter what though, how many times he got the star for a hidden block on my own time though, he got 3 of those things in those specific random spots throughout the entire board. Like, seriously, is it just me? Or perhaps maybe because Wario wants to give me a massive payback after I get a massive criticism for the sake of Wario Master of Disguise, which I highly doubt it might as well will be something to do with that, so... Oh, and by the way, these are these enemies right there with all this weird looking, well, not so much these little black blob stuff, but, I have no idea why I just somehow left the room by complete accident, because I have to deal with those enemies again, so, whoops. So yeah, those enemies as we saw were all these little orangey creatures. These are known as like lines, which, if I were you, do not get involved with these things, because otherwise, since then we got ourselves our big sword we are able to actually still go with us, basically what happens is, if you get involved when you like, well, before we get into more details onto that in a moment, So in some cases though, yeah, we still need able to deal with these enemies in this room. So yeah, if you somehow manage able to get sucked into these little like lines like that, basically though, no matter what though, if you've been in there for a long time, you lose your shield, and because of that, you need to able to get that shield again for the secret item shop and stuff like that, and also a lot of ruby grinding. So because of this though, it continues that tradition for most of those Zelda games basically. So as a result though, there's not much else you can discuss, so. Unless if you're able to actually use the actual magical boomerang, that basically it can just stuns them. So as a result, it did somehow manage able to help you out. So that'll be a good thing, so. Anyways, here's another item we can get, and that is the most important item we can get as well. This one appears to be, I would say, a ladder. So as a result, yeah, what this ladder can do is that you can able to actually create the ladder so you can able to actually go across those bottomless pits, or in some cases though, these little areas you couldn't get through. Or in some cases though, you can able to make certain paths a lot quicker to navigate. Like, for example, in this room right here, if you don't be bothered able to actually go through a normal traditional route, while trying to simply still able to try to deal with certain enemies like these, then obviously you can skip a good chunks of the forms of certain rooms like this. So, pretty cool I might add. Oh yeah, there are a few times though when the certain dungeon rooms can able to actually be in darkness, so bring the actual blue candlelight with you, just in case if you really want able to see what's going on in the room, and that way you can able to see everything, so. But for the most part, this dungeon is not too challenging, apart from that, a couple of exceptions, mind you, which we'll point out whenever we get into it, so. But as I said before, this is why the game starts to get a bit tricky, but nowhere near as difficult until towards the end game, so. And by the way, there's another dungeon map right here, so, and by the way, what's up with that particular locked door, down there? Like, I know for a fact that we can't simply reach that, because otherwise, though, I think it's probably best able to skip that locked door, because otherwise, I'm gonna have to save up these little, small keys for later portions throughout the game, so, yeah, believe me, that I honestly have no idea why that was there, so. Maybe for secrecy or something? I honestly have no idea, so. So I think that pretty much does it for this room, so we'll just go ahead and move along. Oh god, it's Manhandler again! Except this time it's basically the same fight. Although, the entire room itself is a bit different, because now they have to worry about the forms of not only certain blocks, but also about the fact that, well, as far as I'm aware, that there's also a secret in this particular room as well. If you place a bomb right onto the right, like if I was gonna simply do it right now, basically it'll lead us straight into a secret, which actually gives us some more rubies. So, and also it actually activates a shortcut, so you don't need to necessarily try to deal with certain rooms for certain portions of the dungeon like this. So, pretty cool I might add. So anyways, let's go ahead and deal with this next room and grab this another small key. Thankfully, you don't need to deal with all the enemies around in this room. Well, sometimes I do for the sake of locked progressioning. But yeah, it's gonna be one of those tricky situations as far as I'm aware. So, but there we go. Now we've actually done with that, and there's no point for able to actually activate the next locked door. Oh god. That could be pretty deadly for that, this room right here, so. But we somehow still made it regardless, so. And yeah, every time whenever you hear someone like doing a crazy growling sound, which you might barely hear it, but basically though is the fact that this means that you've almost at the boss, so. That basically summarizes about the fact that how the sound usually exists in the first place, so. Anyway, so now we just need to able to find the actual block to shift, so in some cases this one on the left, that we need to shift it over. And from here, we're able to go into the next boss, and unfortunately though, this is where the point where I might as well get the third game over. So in some cases though, here we have, let's say like a Hydra of any sort, but unfortunately though, like I said, I died, so whoops. But thankfully though, if you select continue, basically you can able to start at the beginning of the dungeon, so you don't need to necessarily try to be worried about trying to go all the way back to the overworld and stuff like that. Unlike Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, where basically though, if you somehow get a game over, and then you're able to always start at the very beginning of the game, right where in the actual, the temple was. So in some cases though, it might be very stingy with all that, safe progressioning or checkpoints or something like that. Unlike the final portion of the game in Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, on the other hand though, that I'm sure that, I don't know if exactly I was able to try to tackle for that game, but let me know in the comments down below, despite Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link might actually be one of the hardest games to play, especially noticeable because of all that cheap enemy placement, and as well as the gameplay style that most people seem to be not a huge fan of. And on top of all that stuff though, it might be seems a lot more punishing to deal with, especially considering how the fact that, well, I don't know about you, but it's sure something. And one thing I do appreciate about this game though, alongside with Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, that basically though is the fact that this is one of those NES cartridges that you can get that it actually contains a golden cartridge material, which is pretty cool. So as a result though, that usually it's become common these days with these two games combined. So, because I don't think there's any grey versions of the actual cartridges like this, so it'll always have to be golden for every single releases of the games like this. Well, apart from that one in particular exception though, that's what appears to be the GBA version of those two games combined, because they somehow managed able to still retain, oh yes, I definitely need that fairy so badly, because otherwise though, it will be pretty impossible without it, especially because, well, I just don't able to get a continuous amount of game overs as much as the next guy, but either way, that's saying something, so... Anyway, the next boss fight, as we've already discovered at, despite I somehow got a game over on that particular fight, that is the buddy forms of Dick Dogger, which as a result, you have to take down two of those heads, and in that way it'll deal the damage. And because of that though, sometimes it can be very annoying to deal with, although, potentially speaking though, it's just the fact that because I keep on getting hit most of the time, especially noticeable with the forms of, you know, Link's overall control and stuff, but it might take a bit of some time to get used to sometimes, especially how, I'm not saying outdated, but it's just the fact that it just feels a bit slightly difficult at times, so... But I digress. But it's still pretty cool back in the day, in 1986, so as a result for that kind of stuff though, there's not much else explanations for the sake of, you know, how everything else goes. And I still keep on getting hit right there with all these stingy spikes. Oh, and by the way, you can also use the blue candlelight to able to actually get rid of these guys right here. So that way you don't need to necessarily try to able to come close to one of them and then just get hit in the process. So, yeah, not much else to say, so... Alright, so I believe we've almost done here, so we're just gonna have to, like, take care of this, and boom! Oh, there's only one, bat right here to take care of, so... Anyways, let's try this boss fight again, and thankfully we've got a little amount of health, so it's still possible that I might as well get another game over, but let's not worry about ourselves too much. And thus we got more defense, thanks to the forms of that blue ring we've somehow obtained. So anyways though, there we go. Huh, that was quite tough, but at least we did pull this off, so there we go. And there's our fourth piece of the Triforce of Wisdom, so I think, I believe we only got about 4 pieces left. So, I apologize for that tongue twisting in the end, folks, right there, just because I was trying to think of something, but then I just somehow caught off guard by certain things throughout, especially that I already mentioned quite a lot whenever I managed to play Mario Party 3 on my own time for a bit, usually on hard computer players, because I know for a fact that hard CPU players for Mario Party 3 is actually a lot more aggressively difficult in comparison to both Mario Party 1 and Mario Party 2, and even the future games for that matter, so, but that's as far as I can usually think about it, so... Anyway, so now we've actually got ourselves the ladder throughout the majority of the dungeon itself. So I believe we'll go ahead and, we'll promise you guys we'll go after, I would say the final, heart container in the overworld. And because of that, though, we are basically done with the overworld stuff. Aside from a couple of, things we still need to go after. But either way, though, we'll pretty much gonna say this right now. After we're done with the majority of the overworld stuff, then we can most likely focusing on the dungeons themselves. Despite how difficult they can be sometimes, apart from, the first two, which is, the Eagle and the Moon, because they're pretty simple and self-explanatory, so... But until Dungeon 3, that is where it gets a bit tougher at times, so... But that's how I think about it anyway, so... Oh, and another thing I would like to mention, there's also another reason why I will decide able to redo this game for you guys. It's most likely because we haven't got that much views of this Let's Play, unlike A Link to the Past, alongside with Link's Awakening or Link's Awakening DX for the Game Boy Color. But that's only mainly because I've got no words to say, so... There we go, we've got all the heart containers in the overworld, so we only got about exactly 4 more left. And 4 of them are come from the dungeons themselves, apart from the final one, because that is when Zelda was waiting for us, so... Which, obviously you probably know the drill already, so that basically summarizes as such. And also originally, that Deafy Duck was supposed to be able to get into this game again, but I've decided able to take in charge this time, so... Oh god! Oh, that was close. Oh boy, it's one of those lost woods kind of thing, isn't it? Which, if you go in any directions like these specific directions, then obviously it goes around in a loop. So, but we will be back for this particular section until for later, because obviously I think this is where the next dungeon is going to lead us into. So, but oh no, it feels like I'm almost going to be stuck, am I? Oh wait, if I go to the left, there we go. Doesn't take that long to able to get there as far as I'm aware, so I suppose that might be alright. Oh god, these boulders! So presuming what these boulders do somehow showed up, this means that I think we're almost at Death Mountain, and that is when we get to the final points of the game, but we're not exactly at there yet, just because obviously we still need to deal with like not only getting some more Triforce pieces for the Triforce of Wisdom pieces, and on top of that, we need to get ourselves a bit of a stronger weapon. So in some cases though, I think we actually got enough heart containers as it is, because I'm pretty certain that we can able to actually get ourselves the final upgraded sword, in some cases the Master Sword. So yeah, the introduction into the most iconic swords of all time when it comes to its video game industry. So in some cases though, yeah, that basically I can usually just say about this. So, not much conversation around here, apart from the fact that, well, we only got about, I would say, we got about 3 weeks left now until Christmas this year. So as a result though, yeah, I'm very excited about that. And there's also the, this little bracelet thing right there, which I'm not exactly sure what this does though. Mind you, because I'm pretty much used to with, Link's Awakening when it comes to the power bracelet for the sake of the forms of lifting up things. But that's as far as I can usually think about it, so... But let me know in the comments, because I'm not exactly sure what that bracelet does in this game. But, if we go specifically up there into this graveyard, basically shift that little tombstone, and from here, or this gravestone, whatever you want to call it, and from here we get ourselves the Master Sword, which, again, in order to get that, you need to get some more heart containers, because, again, if you accidentally obtain one of those potions in one of those secret caves you've already discovered, then obviously about the fact that if you're ignoring the heart containers, well, it makes the entire journey a lot difficult for you, especially because, again, this is another reason why you honestly prefer going after heart containers more than any other stuff throughout the game, like, you know, potions, because as far as I'm aware, well, don't get me wrong, the potions do have some bit of good use, but ultimately though, the heart containers will be more important, especially noticeable if you're trying to survive throughout the game, so... Yeah, it's important to know that anyway. Same applies to the forms of those energy tanks from the likes of the Metroid games as well, because otherwise, if you're under-leveled, then you're gonna die a lot, so... yeah, that basically summarizes it such. And also another thing too is that unlike Metroid, that usually in the NES version most likely, that The Legend of Zelda does have a file selection screen, which I do appreciate about that, because unlike Metroid 1, it doesn't have a file selection on that particular NES version of Metroid 1, but apparently the Famicom Disk System does, so Naughty White Japanese version got very lucky with all that save files and all that stuff, which I've got no words to say. But anyways though, so I think we've only got about I think we're pretty much at the halfway point of the game, actually. So as a result, well, mind you, we're pretty much almost done with the heart containers collecting. And on top of that, we're basically now on the halfway point for its Triforce of Wisdom pieces collecting, too. So, naturally speaking, we are getting there. Especially noticeable that, as I said before, this game is going to be really short. Especially noticeable, well, despite it's going to be a lot of emphasis on exploration, but ultimately speaking though, that I'm actually having a bit of fun with this. Despite there are some difficult parts here and there, just like in the forms of any other old school video games these days, so... Anyway, so now let's go ahead and buy some bit of medicine for able to actually just to save up for some rubies and stuff. Normally, I was trying to go after the red potion, but I'm actually going to be going after the blue one, because not only it's quite cheap, but also I really don't want to waste a lot of rubies, because otherwise, for bow and arrows in mind, that I'm probably not going to waste too much rubies, so that's essentially what I'm going to do, so... Anyway, so we've now actually accessed the Master Sword, which makes things a lot more powerful for us now. And on top of that, we are pretty much done with the forms of some overworld stuff now. Well, apart from tiny exceptions there, but either way though, let's not worry about that right now. So in some cases though, now let's go ahead and find the 5th dungeon, and we'll pretty much have to save the 5th dungeon until for the next video anyway, just because about the fact that we spend almost like 40 minutes so far for the sake of this recording session, so... But I'm very surprised and very impressed of how far we got into this game so far, so I'm proud of myself for doing so. And especially noticeable, I very appreciate that the colors do manage to pop up this time. Although, the annoying thing about this is that there's a lot of seizure reducing points, so I do apologize for that, folks. Especially noticeable if you're an epilepsy, I don't know what you would call it, because I know for a fact it's been a very long while since I actually mentioned something like this, so... Anyways, let's head back into this familiar place again, since, earlier we go. So, all you have to do, just go up for about multiple times, and if you do so already, well, you'll find out that you will find, well, assuming if the jingle will pop up, there we go. Now we actually access the 5th dungeon in the game, so it doesn't take that long to get there, so as a result, not much else to say. So I think we'll go ahead and end things up at this point right here, so join me next time for more of Let's Play of The Legend of Zelda. It's the fact that we'll take on the forms of the 5th dungeon in the game, and as far as I'm aware, it's called the Lizard, so at least as far as I can recall that anyway. So I'll see you guys until our next Saturday. Later, fellas.